I have always touted how proud I am of our relationship with Ring of Honor Wrestling. They call it the best wrestling on the planet. I never argue with it. Some of the best wrestlers on the planet. One of them that I am so glad I've gotten to know joins us on the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina hotline. I am so glad I stopped at that Subway shop in Lakeland, Florida in 2017 because this man was standing right in front of me and we got to know each other and has become a wonderful friend and someone I always enjoy talking to. He is the former Ring of Honor World Champion, a Grand Slam champion, and has held belts everywhere. Matt Taven, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, man? Who would have thought a Subway double chicken chop salad would form this long-term relationship? How are you? How is quarantine going for you?
I'm doing okay. The radio gig keeps going, even with the lack of sports. We still have the draft and everything, and then the real life gig keeps going because I work in state government, so. That's always going. But more importantly, how are you? How's everything in your world? How are you dealing with the quarantine?
Everything in my world extremely different. I'll tell you that much. It's weird. I'm fine. When you boil things down to the nitty gritty, but it's just such a strange world we're living in. And, the guys text each other and just kind of see how everyone's doing. You can just tell everyone's so itching to get back to normal and just get back on the road. And man, I had the ankle surgery in December and I've been rehabbing and now this is going on. It's felt like a lifetime since I've been able to wrestle and get back in the ring. So for me, I'm like, crawling up the walls. I'm walking on the ceiling at this point. I'm definitely ready for things to get back to normal. I think this has just been such a whirlwind of a situation for everyone that it just kind of feels like it was dropped upon us. And now things have had a little bit of time to settle. And now it's kind of that, all right, so when can we get back to how we were before? And with no answers in sight, it's just got that unsettling feeling. So trying to fight that at all times. But, besides major life existential dilemmas, I'm absolutely fine.
Well, good. How's the ankle?
The ankle's not bad. One of the biggest disappointments or one of the biggest setbacks for me with the coronavirus is that my physical therapy office and the doctor's office is closed. I'm able to talk with my PT and my surgeons via, Skype interviews or Skype calls, I should say, but it's just not the same. It's not the same as going in and being able to be on the machines that help your recovery and talk to, talk to your doctor, kind of bounce ideas off him, tell him how you're feeling, let him, gauge where you're at. It's a whole lot different, kind of just having to explain to someone and hoping that they understand where you're coming from. And just the exercise alone, it's always easier to do things with a partner and a helping hand. And I'm trying to do as much as humanly possible by myself at home. To me, it just doesn't feel the same, but, it's the cards we're dealt right now, and I can only do what I'm in control of. And right now, I'm just trying to get as much rehab done as home as humanly possible for both the knee and ankle. And I hope that when all this is over with, I can be that much closer to getting back in the ring.
How much does you're talking about rehab, and usually when wrestlers rehab, they're rehabbing with a certain date in mind to get back in the ring. Depending on whatever the injury is. With the current situation, with the, we don't know when, wrestling will happen in ring again and when fans can watch it. How much does that affect your rehab and I guess maybe even your motivation? I mean, how much of that kind of, do you have to go through like a struggle sometimes thinking, well, yeah, I'm going to get better, but I don't know when I'm going to get back in the ring because they don't know when we're going to get back in the ring?
I think without a doubt, it's human nature. You know, it's one of those things where, especially rehabbing an injury. I've had two surgeries in the last in the last couple of months, and so to rehab two separate injuries is a heavy process, and it's there's some days where you just don't want to do it. But then again, you know, when you're able to go to a place, you know, like your physical therapy office, it helps you motivate to keep going. It definitely is on me now to continuously to motivate myself to not be like, you can take today off. We don't even know when we're going to get back to it, because when we do get back to it, like I said, I want to be as close as humanly possible to getting back in the ring. So it's definitely a struggle, and it's definitely something that I have to find in myself to wake up in the morning and kind of set goals for myself and act like it's a normal day, because it's easy to just be like, oh man, I should probably just watch the news all day, right? And then eat ice cream. And as much as I love doing that, and I want to do that, I have to at this point push myself to make sure I'm keeping my focus on rehabbing. And so it's definitely a difficult process. It's something that I wasn't expecting, to be rehabbing by myself at home all day, but again, I just have to make the most of the situation.
And you're right. There are times, you know, I watch the news. I've been watching the news quite a bit, and there are times you have to push back just for the sake of your mental well being, because you know it weighs on you, and sometimes I have to kind of turn it off, and you know, whether it's watching Honor Club or just any myriad of other forms of entertainment. You're right. You got to push back. Talking with Matt Taven. Let me ask you this: what is it that you are watching nowadays, streaming, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, you know, Disney Plus, whatever? What's been catching your eye lately?
You know, it's you're absolutely right too. It's that the news can get you in such a mental space that it's not healthy to continuously harp on it or obsess over it, because a lot of things too are contradicting, so you don't know what to think, and your mind just kind of scrambles and is racing at all times. But I think, like everyone else, I'm finding an escape with the forms of entertainment that I always have. And for a wrestling fan, I think right now is like a very special time, because there's been so much wrestling in the past year that there's no way I feel like anyone could keep up with all of it. So I've had an opportunity to kind of go back and watch a lot of it, rewatch a lot of the stuff that happened on Honor Club. You know, just recently was the anniversary of Madison Square Garden. I had a chance to sit down, watch it, write about it. And in reality, I really didn't have a chance to do that, because if you think about it, a week after winning it, I'm in Pittsburgh defending the title against Flip Gordon, and it just goes on and on and on, and you really don't have much downtime to kind of sit and smell the roses. But right now, I'm able to catch up with a lot of stuff of not just myself, but the entire Ring of Honor roster has been having, especially this past, you know, the past couple of events of 2020, were on fire, and it makes you even more itchy to get back in the ring, because you're watching and you're like, oh man, this stuff's getting good. But like everyone else, I'm sure I'm indulging in all the binge-worthy Netflix series that everyone else has. Tiger King, of course. Yeah, I told the story of on my podcast about making a trip there before a show in Oklahoma to Joe Exotic's Tiger Zoo, randomly, obviously years ago before any of this blew up. So now it's kind of crazy to see it from the other side of the fence, no pun intended. But you know, it's for me. I'm a giant wrestling fan, so right now is definitely catch up season on any wrestling that I've been missing out on.
Okay, and you know, I'll start with Madison Square Garden, because I thought about you a lot last week. It was like you said, the 1 year anniversary of G1 Supercard, Madison Square Garden. You win the Ring of Honor World Title in that ladder match. It was for a small town East Texas kid like me to be able to cover something like that in the Garden was a dream come true. I know that was a dream come true for you, and I loved what you posted on ROHWrestling.com, that blog you posted. And one of the things that really caught my eye, kind of a fun little part of that story, was you talking about you were trying to find the sign in Madison Square Garden where every champion, boxing, wrestling, you name it, poses in front of. And you and Dalton Castle were going pretty much all over the arena trying to find that sign. And then after you win the title, one of the MSG staffers comes to get you to go pose in front of the sign, and you're going, "Hey, Dalton, come on, we're going to see the sign." You think, I mean, that was such a great moment, and you think about that. I mean, I gotta imagine, especially last week, that was on your mind, and of course, you wrote that wonderful post on ROHWrestling.com. Just kind of reflect back on that and how special that was, not only for you, but the entire Ring of Honor roster and the wrestling world in general.
So, a crazy story about the sign is that sign's in a freight elevator. Like you would never find it in a million years. And Madison Square because it's obviously connected to Penn Station, and you got the theater, and there's just people everywhere, and there's a million floors. Madison Square Garden is a confusing place as it is. So there we are, just having a tough time finding our locker room in general. But me and Dalton are like, we gotta find that sign. I gotta find what the sign is. And at the end of the night, when they opened the door to that freight elevator, you would have thought, someone just opened the door to Willy Wonka's factory for me. My eyes lit up, and I saw it. I was like, it's in a freight elevator. It blew my mind when I saw the doors open for that freight elevator, and there was the Madison Square Garden sign. It right now talking about it, I have this giant smile on my face because it makes me laugh just thinking about it. Because anyone that's been a fan of sports in general knows the significance of Madison Square Garden and posing in front of that sign and with your title belt and what it means, and it means the same to me. So that whole day just seems like such a blur, but it's nice, right now to be able to reflect back on it and watch it for kind of the first time to really watch it and enjoy it. The first couple of times I watch it, I'm watching it and I'm being so critical of myself and watching for certain things. And now I can sit back and I know how, the story ends for the most part and how the title reign went after that. And I can kind of sit back and enjoy it for what it is. And, man, what a special moment for someone like me who grew up in the Northeast, who always knew of, every wrestling icon that I've ever looked up to, had a big moment at Madison Square Garden. And it still doesn't seem real to me that I was able to do the same. But, it's something that I can hang my hat on forever. And, man, it brings me so much happiness just thinking about it's without a doubt the greatest moment of my life so far. But it's hard to put into words, and I'm very appreciative of it. And at the same time, Ring of Honor, every single guy in there still looks at that as we can get back there, we can continue to work and get back to reliving that dream over again. And I have a firm belief from being a guy that's been in Ring of Honor since before we were just on pay-per-view, and then seeing the first pay-per-view, and then the arenas getting bigger, and then Madison Square Garden. I've seen this company roll with the punches and be able to recover through thick and thin. And even something like the coronavirus, I'm sure we're going to be able to come back and get right back on our feet. But man, what a special moment! What an unbelievable moment!
It sure was. I was talking to Carrie Silken a few weeks ago, and talking about that and talking about how Ring of Honor it was catching fire, and you got some great talent coming in and everything. And yeah, I can't wait for this thing to blow over so we can get back to seeing what Ring of Honor can produce. I wanted to ask you this week on Ring of Honor television. They're going to spotlight you talking about some of your favorite matches, and you mentioned one of them was the 60-minute draw with Jay Lethal that led to the Madison Square Garden match. What was it about that match that was special? And you look back at it now in its context leading up to G1 Supercard. How much that? I mean, just talk about the reflection of that match.
Well, I it's funny because in this time period, Ring of Honor is able to do a lot of cool TV stuff. And like, I don't know about you, but I really enjoy these kind of like in-depth looks. And with so much wrestling being go, 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 to take a chance to kind of look back and see the guys, talk about these moments, is some of the most compelling stuff that I think's on that you could put on TV right now. But Jay Lethal, he had his spotlight episode a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about being in the ring with guys like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, and talking about what that meant to him, and that he hoped that one day he could be in the same shoes as those guys and mean something to someone else. And I almost laughed at, like, how do you not know, Jay? Like, being in the ring with Jay Lethal in that moment is how like, his words about being in the ring with AJ is exactly how I felt about being in the ring with him. And so, I almost think, like, Jay, you're already doing that. So you are the franchise, like, you are the meter stick that everyone's judged against. And it's an unbelievable special thing to be able to be trusted by a guy like that, but to be able to see yourself perform at the level of a guy like that. And I'm sure that going 60 Minutes with Jay Lethal in Vegas was definitely not just like I don't know, like a storyline, set up for Madison Square Garden, but I really believe in reality that it was a litmus test for me. Like, it was just to see if I had what it takes, and I truly believe that if I blew things, if I don't do good in Vegas, things wouldn't have gone down the way they would have in Madison Square. So I see that match as just having so much pressure on it. And then on top of all that, you're going 60 minutes, which just is a daunting task against anyone. And I'm training, watching every Iron Man match, thinking about, like, I obviously have the school up here in New England, so I'm wrestling in the ring and just watching myself, get 40 minutes into a training session and wanting to pass out and thinking, how am I going to go an hour with Jay Lethal? So it's definitely a nerve-wracking task, but to see it go so well and to see myself, really kind of just come to the absolute top of my game, and something that I was telling people that I was at, but to see it actually come to fruition, again, it's hard not to say that Madison Square Garden is the best match and this and that, but my favorite match of all time, it will always be Vegas, because there is no Madison Square Garden without it. And I watch it back now, and I still can't be prouder to be able to go into a situation like that and to deliver with a guy like Jay Lethal.
I remember that match. It was, you went through the roller coaster of emotions, and it was just, it took me back to my childhood watching the 60-minute Broadways with, the likes of Flair and Sting and Dusty Rhodes and those guys, back in the day when a 60-minute match wasn't very uncommon. You would see it every now and again. You don't see them very much nowadays, but you go back, like, again, my childhood in the 80s, especially in the early 80s, that was a very popular staple of a lot of the territory. So, and yeah, you're right. What Ring of Honor is doing right now with their TV and everything, it's a great way to catch up with the history of Ring of Honor for those, that like you said, may have caught on in the last couple of years. You get to see where Ring of Honor was in the beginning, and all the wrestlers that have come through there, and see some of the great talent. Talk with Matt Taven. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Taven. Before I let you go, you mentioned watching Tiger King and and your trip to Joe Exotic's zoo. Now, Joe has a very, I guess, ancillary connection with pro wrestling.
Yes.
And in fact, for a few months, I got to work with Joe at a wrestling promotion in Sherman when I was doing some ring announcing. So what was your take of Joe Exotic, of the zoo, and what you've seen since?
See, it's funny because we were driving up into Oklahoma City, and we had just had a show in Texas, and we were just driving, and I'm a big, I don't know, I'm a big guy. I don't want to say historian or like history buff, but just situations or places that have big significance in history. I always love to check them out and see them for myself. And I'm a big fan of the macabre. And as we're driving up, I'm talking people in to go into the Waco compound where the Branch Davidians were. We make a stop there, and everyone thinks I'm like, crazy for bringing them to all these obscure places when they're just trying to get to a show. And now we're just driving, trying to beeline up to the show because I've wasted everyone's time going out to Waco. And we're driving by these billboards, and it's like 240 exotic tigers. And I start looking at everyone in the van. I'm like, I don't know, guys. I think we could have times to squeeze in the zoo. It sounds pretty sweet. And so we see like another billboard, and half the van starts getting on board. And then we finally saw like a billboard, and I could be wrong. Like, this could be my memory playing tricks on me, but I thought Joe Exotic was definitely himself on the billboard with the tiger. And at that point, we were like, we have to go. We have to see this place. We have to know what it's all about. And we ended up, squeezing it in on our trip up to Oklahoma City. And I feel bad because, we watch the Netflix documentary now, and you kind of see the mistreatment of animals, and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't support it. But at the time, it didn't seem like, we had no idea, obviously, and we didn't have the information that we do now. And it's just, we had a good time. I mean, there was a huge zoo. These tigers looked like they had a good amount of room. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of zoos in the first place because I do think that animals probably should be in their natural habitat, but you don't see a tiger zoo that often. And I wanted to go by and check it out, and it didn't seem like anything was necessarily out of the ordinary or being run poorly. And we had a good little visit, got to see some tigers, and we're out on our way. And it was only years later where a podcast actually came out about Joe Exotic and Carol Baskins and all that stuff, where we started kind of putting the pieces together, and would text each other and I'd be sending this podcast around to everyone in the van. I was like, remember that place we went to? This guy tried to kill a lady. And so it's kind of just makes for a crazy story to look back on now. But a random trip to a zoo on the way to Oklahoma City is now the focus of the Netflix world, and who would have thought it 4 years later?
I know. I believe me, when I met him and worked with him a little bit up in Sherman, he was every bit the exotic man that it was portrayed. You're right. I mean, he was always cordial, but he was something else to experience. Talking with Matt Taven, follow him on Twitter at Matt Taven. By the way, are you still doing you still got some episodes of Take a Bump coming out? Your podcast?
Yes. We our studio is basically right in the heart of a hotspot right now. So we weren't able to get into the studio for the past weeks, but we are doing some recording outside the studio, and we'll be having some new episodes up probably a week from today.
Sounds good. Matt, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. I wish
Likewise.
you all the best with rehab and with the quarantining and everything. And, man, I so hope for that day coming soon when I get to see you in the ring with the fans cheering or booing, whatever the case may be. Either way, all the best to you. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll chat again soon.
Hey, my man, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we'll do it again soon.